All right. So what is foreign filing, right? It's the process of registering your business in other states than other than the one that you're currently incorporated in, right? This is what we call foreign filing, right? It's kind of like foreign qualifications is like, qualifications for business is like getting a driver license for a new state when you move. So just like you need a valid driver's license to legally drive from one state to another, as you're moving, the business needs to register for foreign qualifications to legally operate in a state other than it was originally formed. Okay, and this is how you can expand your lender network from where you formed a company to the next one. It's really simple to set up. You don't need to pay, your legal Zooms, your court nets, and there's a thousand other ones out there. But if you just go into Google and says foreign file in Florida, right? Because I'm here in Miami, you can see it gives you a lot of information on what to do. You want to essentially go to the Secretary of State reference, right? And just be able to register your company there. You do need a registered agent, essentially somebody that can accept documents on your behalf. If something happened, if you get sued, they need to have somebody who's representation. But if it's in your own state, you could be your own registered agent. But if it's in a different state, you need somebody. And don't confuse that, oh, yeah, I'm in Wyoming and I'm going to use the registered agent address as my business address because it's not the same. I've had some clients, tell me that before. So you have to get into your corporate compliance, right? So if I'm in Miami and I am registering it in, a different state, I'm going to need to set up the virtual address or a brick and mortar. Make sure the virtual address doesn't have anything associated with fraud. But the fact that, a lot of these challenges that we've been facing is that if you're in a location, even a Regis or an OPA, all these different other companies out there, but if somebody did fraud, it's going to be on Google, and a lender's going to look at that, an underwriter, and that can then kill your loan because that address was associated with some fraud in the past. And they don't go next to that. Does that make sense? So you have to go through the same exact corporate compliance structure that I've been teaching you. Online, update your online presence, local listings, websites. So if you have two different locations, you have one in Miami and I have, let's just say, one in Vegas, I'm going to put that on my website because I'm proud that I just expanded my operation. It has to make sense, from that. So you need a good story of why you expanded. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what they're not telling people, Anthony. They're not telling people that. They're just saying, oh, just do a foreign filing and do key bank. Like, bro.
So now the question is, if you go through the details, right? The devil's in the details, right? You're gonna need to look at, okay, well, if I'm in Miami and I have a Florida license and I have my new location in Vegas. So if you're able to get a state ID from the state that you're foreign filed in, then it does make the whole story a little bit bigger. I'm going cross between Vegas and Miami. That's how I'm able to operate the whole thing over here, right? So when I was living in California, I had a state ID, but in my driver license I had in Miami for over 10 years. Okay, and at the same point, I was able to get an Arizona ID, which it's kind of crazy because that never expires. I literally still have it. It's like 10, 15 years ago, and I still have that from that time. But it allows me to, hey, if I want a foreign file in Arizona, I can show that I have a physical address over there. It just essentially it helps with the whole story of, working the system in the foreign filing game, which, hey, you can use your state ID if you know somebody's address, right? Fly in there, go and get that. You can have as many state IDs. You can only have one driver license. I learned
Yep.
that the hard way when I got my global entry, and the custom homeland security officer was like, you got a driver license in California and Florida? I'm like,
Oh
yeah,
no.
is that
Oh
not?
no.
He's like, no, man, you can't have two. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go and kill the California. Thank you. Well, yeah, it's okay. But so when I was living in California, I maximized all the banks in that state. It was a great funding states, but again, not so great for taxes. Then I set up shop in Miami, in Florida, And then now I worked all the Florida banks. So I got the best of both worlds, right? And that's kind of how I was able to leverage my banks out there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so after you've executed your funding rounds in your states, be able to look at, hey, how many banks can I go to? Create your funding plan, maximizing
Key.
your Pennsylvania banks. I'm not sure if you're here or not, but you're looking at strategically, hey, do I want to go in Texas? Do I want to go in Pennsylvania? Northeast, right? West Coast, where in the middle, right? Do I want to be at? And so let's be strategic about knowing the 2 steps ahead of the road. Yeah, so you got to make sure, right? There's pros and cons to all this, but looking at the the state tax implications, yeah. So if you hit a certain threshold of revenue, then you could be taxed in that state. And
Mm.
so this is a site that I found that I felt if you want to take a snapshot of this, where if you're going to play the foreign filing game, and I believe what's his name? Dennis Thorne, when I told him about the foreign filing aspect of it, and he wanted to expand. I think he went out into like 20 or 25 different states, and he just foreign filed with everybody. Uh, but know those rules, right? So there's certain thresholds that if you hit 500,000, California enacted legislation that raised the sales threshold and removed the number of transactions on the 25th of 2019. Okay, cool. So if you're in there just to go ahead and get bank funding, dissolve it right after, hey, I'm for the people, not for the banks, right? Be the Robin Hood here. Do not care. So I feel like it's the best states for foreign filing. Delaware is great. Nevada, Wyoming, Texas, Florida. Essentially, you you want to look at certain, the pros and definitely the costs, the cons, right? So Delaware is great, but they have a pretty high annual franchise tax. Very common for like investors, but great for being anonymous. So if you're doing the whole foreign filing, especially when I'm going to get into the aged corps, a lot of this is going to matter for how you're getting yourself set up. But these are all great states. Age or shelf corps. Should you or should you not invest in one? Right? A shelf corporation is also known as an age corp, or a shelf company is a corporation that's formed but not actually in use. Right? And just like it says, it's been sitting on the shelf, not doing anything. Right? These entities can have either your EINs, can have years of filed tax returns, and somehow even have bank accounts from the past. So think of it like you're doing a business acquisition. So a lot of these, there's a lot of scammers out there that are just reselling old corps that have been dissolved. So you really have to make sure all the stuff that I'm gonna teach you next week makes sense.